a can of bear spray, a hunting knife, a VHF radio. All of them sitting out in the open, exactly where a man had left them. Untouched, unused, waiting for someone who was never coming back. Bear spray, for those unfamiliar with the Canadian wilderness, is not an accessory. It is a last line of survival, a pressurized aerosol deterrent that can stop a charging grizzly in its tracks at 10 meters. Every experienced backcountry hunter keeps it within arm's reach at all times. Not in a tent, not inside a pack, on their hip or in their hand, ready. Bart Schleyer had spent 20 years of his life studying grizzly bears. He had trapped them in Yellowstone. He had tracked them across Alaska. He had done the same with Siberian tigers, animals that could kill a man in 4 seconds, crawling into their dens at night to weigh and assess their young while the adults were out hunting. This was a man who understood predators the way most people understand traffic lights. Instinctively, automatically, without thinking. So why was his bear spray sitting on the ground, undisturbed? Why was his knife still in its sheath? Why was his radio never used? And why, when one of the greatest wilderness experts in North America went into the Yukon taiga on September 14th, 2004, did he simply vanish, leaving behind every tool that could have saved his life? That question has no answer, not one that holds up to scrutiny. And the deeper you go into this case, the more you examine the physical evidence, the testimony of the men who searched for him, the scene they found when they arrived, the more the accepted explanation dissolves into something else entirely. Something that even seasoned wildlife biologists refuse to explain on the record. This is the story of Bart Schleyer, and the detail in the official reports that no one has fully reckoned with. He was born in Cheyenne, Wyoming in 1955, into the kind of childhood that seems almost mythological now. His father, Dr. Otis Schleyer, was a physician who took his son hunting before the boy could properly hold a rifle, strapping young Bart into the back seat of a Jeep at age 4 to chase antelope across the high plains. By 10, Bart was in Mozambique on safari. By 17, he had taken impala, gazelle, sable, ibex, wildebeest, warthog, and lion. But it wasn't the trophies that drove him. His sister Claudia remembered it differently. She said he didn't just like animals, he needed to know everything about them. Where they slept, what they feared, how they thought. Hunting was simply the closest he could get. He earned a master's degree in wildlife biology from Montana State University in 1979. His thesis was on the activity patterns of grizzly bears in Yellowstone. One of his professors later said that in over 20 years of teaching, across more than 42,000 students, Bart Schleyer was a standout, not because of grades, because of presence, a quality that some people are simply born with in the wilderness. He went to work for the Interagency Grizzly Bear Study Team in Yellowstone, and then the Bob Marshall Wilderness. His job was to get close enough to bears to jump them out of their beds. Not with a firearm, just his body and his knowledge. He got chased up trees more times than his colleagues could count. He treated it like recreation. A woman reporter from a national magazine visited his camp once and wrote a feature story about him. She titled it, "The Bronze and Beautiful Heartthrob of Cook City, Montana." His colleagues called him Body Beautiful Bart, and they meant it as a joke, but the description was accurate. By the late 1990s, he had moved further north. First Alaska, where he worked seasonally as a taxidermist in Wasilla, guided bear hunters on the peninsula, and continued his fieldwork. Then Russia, for months at a time, tracking and radio collaring Siberian tigers for the Hornacher Wildlife Institute, entering their dens at night while the adults were away, weighing and examining their young, retreating before the parents returned. Maurice Hornacher, the Institute's director and one of the most respected carnivore scientists on the planet, described Schleyer as one of the finest outdoorsmen he had ever known. In 2002, he moved to Whitehorse in the Yukon. He wanted stone sheep, and he wanted the kind of wilderness that Alaska could no longer give him: vast, undisturbed, indifferent. By the fall of 2004, he had just completed a 2-week solo stone sheep hunt on foot. He hadn't taken his ram. He told his father it didn't matter. He'd enjoyed himself. That was the last conversation they had. He made one more call, arranged one more charter. And on September 14th, 2004, a float plane set him down on the larger of the Reed Lakes, a remote body of water on the southern slope of the Selwyn Mountains, 175 miles north of Whitehorse. The nearest human habitation was Stewart Crossing, 15 miles to the west. Not a town. A gas station and an RV park on the Klondike Highway. He had 3 large plastic crates, action packers, the kind hunters use, loaded with at least 2 weeks of food, a tent, an inflatable boat, a bow he had built himself from Russian ash and tiger sinew, based on a design 4,700 years old. His arrows were handmade, carried in a buckskin quiver he had sewn himself. He was, by every account of every person who ever worked alongside him, exactly where he was supposed to be, doing exactly what he was built to do. The pilot noted nothing unusual on departure. Schleyer appeared well prepared, calm, in good spirits. The plane climbed north. The lake shrank to a gray mirror in the boreal valley below. The taiga closed in from every side, green and absolute. And that was the last anyone saw of Bartholomew Schleyer alive. September 27th, 2004. The pickup date. The charter pilot flew back to Reed Lakes, banked over the campsite, and saw the tent. He set the plane down on the water. He walked to the camp. No Bart. He flew to Mayo, the nearest town, with a phone, and reported the hunter missing. The next morning, the Royal Canadian Mounted Police flew in and began their search. What they found, and did not find, would trouble investigators for years. The camp was intact. The action packer still held most of its food. There were the remains of one partially consumed meal. Lunch or supper, investigators weren't certain. No campfire had been made. And there, laid out near the tent, were the items that would anchor every subsequent conversation about this case. A can of bear spray, a hunting knife, and a VHF radio. All untouched, all within reach, all utterly useless to a man who had already gone. The Mounties searched. They found nothing beyond the camp. 1. Officers speculated, based on the tent's condition, it appeared to have been pushed in or wrapped tightly around the surrounding spruce, that a bear had dragged Schleyer out in the night. But there was no blood, no tears in the tent fabric, no sleeping bag inside, and no signs of struggle anywhere on the ground around it. The soft moss, the searchers noticed, looked undisturbed, as if nothing violent had occurred there at all. With weather deteriorating, the RCMP called off the search and left. This did not satisfy Dib Williams. Williams, a friend of Schleyer's in Whitehorse, was convinced the Mounties had given up too quickly. He arranged for bush pilot Wayne Curry to fly them back to the lake after the police had gone. On the first day, they found the inflatable boat, half a mile. From camp down the shoreline, Bart had clearly paddled it there. On the second day, they found his bow. It was leaning against a spruce tree. The handmade quiver was beside it, the arrows undisturbed. The bow itself resting gently against the bark, as though someone had simply set it down to sit for a moment. 60 yards back into the woods from the boat and the bow, they found his dry bag. It was sitting on flat ground at the edge of a thicket of black spruce and willows. Schleyer had apparently been using it as a seat, probably calling moose from that position, the way bow hunters do, waiting for a bull to answer. The bag was undamaged. Its contents were intact. No blood. No sign of any confrontation on the ground around it. And then, nearby, the searchers found something else. A balaclava, a knit face mask that was shredded. There was hair in it. Bart's hair. Williams reported his findings to the RCMP, who flew back in. On October 3, 2004, a grid search of the surrounding area turned up the rest. A baseball cap, camouflage pants, a camera, a partial skull, and a few small bones. All scattered within roughly 60 meters of the dry bag. The teeth in the skull allowed positive identification. Bart Schleyer had been found. In the surrounding area, conservation officers collected bear and wolf scat. The samples were sent to a laboratory in Vancouver. The December 2004 results confirmed that grizzly bear scat from the area contained human material. That finding appeared to close the case for the RCMP, who leaned toward the conclusion that Schleyer had been attacked and killed. But the biologists who knew him best did not close anything, because the laboratory result told them one thing, that a bear consumed his remains. It said nothing about whether that bear killed him. And the physical evidence, they argued, pointed in a very different direction. John Hechtel was a wildlife biologist for the Alaska Department of Fish and Game, and one of North America's most respected authorities on grizzly bear behavior. He had known Bart Schleyer for years. When he reviewed the evidence from Reed Lakes, he said something that the RCMP's official position could not accommodate. He said, "Nothing to me points to an animal attacking," he explained. "A bear attack," he said, "tends to be a bloody affair, almost invariably. Bears go for the head. They leave marks, scratch patterns on the skull, puncture wounds in the bone. The Vancouver pathologist who examined Schleyer's partial skull found none of these things. No tooth punctures, no scratch marks consistent with a predatory attack. The skull, in terms of trauma evidence, told them nothing at all. There was also the matter of the camp. The food container, half a mile from where the remains were found, had not been disturbed. Bear experts found this nearly impossible to believe. If a grizzly had been bold enough to attack and kill an experienced hunter, already a statistically rare event, that same bear would almost certainly have investigated the camp afterward. Bears are indiscriminate foragers. They follow blood. They follow scent. They follow food. A camp full of provisions within a half mile of a kill site would have been irresistible. Yet the food was untouched, the container sealed, and then there was the absence of fabric. When bears consume a person, they also consume their clothing. Laboratory analysis of the Timothy Treadwell case in Alaska confirmed this with grim precision. But at Reed Lakes, Yukon Conservation Officer Kevin Johnston examined every scat sample collected in the area. Not a single fragment of fabric, not a single thread. The clothing that Bart Schleyer had been wearing the day he vanished was never found at all. Johnstone said publicly that this fact baffled him. Rick Furnell, a retired wildlife biologist for the Yukon Territory who had spent nearly 30 years working these lands, went further. He said he considered the Bart Schleyer case the strangest he had ever encountered in his entire career. 30 years. The strangest. Here's what the physical record confirms. Bart Schleyer arrived at Reed Lakes on September 14th in good health and excellent spirits. He made camp. He ate a partial meal. He paddled his inflatable boat approximately half a mile down the lake. He left the boat at the shoreline, walked 60 yards into the trees to a flat clearing at the edge of a spruce thicket, and sat on his dry bag. He leaned his bow against a tree beside him. He was likely calling moose, a technique that involves vocal imitation to draw a bull into range. And then, at some point that afternoon, he ceased to exist in any way the search teams could account for. No signs of struggle on the ground. No blood. No tracks beyond his own entering the clearing. No fabric in the scat. No trauma evidence on the recovered skull. A campsite undisturbed. A food supply untouched. A can of bear spray sitting exactly where he left it. The official position of the RCMP remains that Schleyer was attacked and killed by a grizzly bear. The bear scat containing human biological material is their primary evidence. And to be fair, this scenario is not impossible. A bear moving downwind through dense taiga in complete silence could approach a stationary caller before the hunter detected its presence. In that scenario, reaction time would be nearly zero. The bear spray would offer no defense at all. But Hechtel said that scenario was the least likely of the available options, because of the blood, or rather, the complete and total absence of it, and because of the camp, and because of the fabric. Too many absences, too many things that should be there that are not. The second theory is that Schleyer died from a sudden medical event, a cardiac episode, an aneurysm, a physiological failure that struck without warning. He was 49 years old. He had just completed 2 consecutive weeks of strenuous solo hunting in alpine terrain. Even in extraordinary physical condition, and by all accounts, his condition was extraordinary, the heart is not negotiable. Under this theory, he collapsed in the clearing, and scavengers, wolves, ravens, eventually a grizzly, consumed his remains over the following days, destroying any trace of a natural death. This is the explanation that most of his closest friends consider most likely. It is consistent with the absence of struggle and the absence of blood. It accommodates the undisturbed camp, and it allows the man to have died in the place he loved most, in the way he had always lived, alone and without asking for help. But it does not explain the missing clothing. Not fully. The third possibility, the one investigators consider highly unlikely but have never formally ruled out, is foul play. Hechtel raised it reluctantly. He noted that Reed Lakes was not as isolated as it appeared on a map. The Klondike Highway was 15 miles to the west, close enough that a small float plane could reach the lake in minutes from the road. Anyone with a plane could have landed. No one would have known. In a wilderness with no witnesses within 15 miles, a great many things become possible that would be impossible elsewhere. Schleyer had spent years in Russia working with Siberian tigers and knew individuals connected to various networks in that country. This is not an allegation. It is a fact his friends acknowledged while simultaneously dismissing it. Bart was like the nicest guy in the world, one colleague said. Foul play doesn't seem to be at the top of the list. But he added, as they all did, nobody knows. Nobody was there. And then there is the fourth consideration. Not a theory exactly, but a pattern. A pattern documented across dozens of similar cases. Experienced outdoorsmen, remote locations, minimal recoverable remains, equipment left in place, no definitive cause established. Schleyer's case sits in that collection like a stone in still water, quiet, undisturbing on the surface. But everything around it ripples. The RCMP file on Bartholomew Schleyer remains technically open. In practice, it has not been actively investigated in years. The evidence that existed in that spruce clearing, whatever it was, whatever it meant, has long since been absorbed back into the taiga, consumed and dispersed by the same processes that govern everything in that country. There is nothing left to analyze. What there is, what remains in the most literal sense, is the account of what searchers found and did not find. The dry bag on the moss, the handmade bow against the tree, the shredded balaclava with hair in it, the partial skull with no trauma evidence, the camp undisturbed, the food sealed, the bear spray unused, the knife still in its sheath. John Murnane, a government wildlife veterinarian in Montana who had known Schleyer for years, said something in the aftermath that no one has improved upon since. He said, "Nobody knows. Nobody was there. All of those possibilities need to be explored and sorted out." 2 decades later, they have not been. The Reed Lakes still sit where they have always sat, on the southern slope of the Selwyn Mountains, 175 miles north of Whitehorse. No roads reach them. No trails. The only way in is by float plane, the way Bart Schleyer arrived on a clear September morning in 2004. Moose still move through the taiga at the water's edge in the early mornings. Grizzlies still forage the sedge flats in autumn. The spruce thicket where his bow was found is indistinguishable now from every other spruce thicket in that valley. There is nothing to mark it, nothing to remember it by. Every September, somewhere in Canada's north, a charter float plane carries a hunter into water just like that and sets them down on a lake shore just like that and lifts away. And the wilderness closes behind the sound of the engine, and there is silence. And the person on the shore is alone with whatever the taiga decides to be that day. Ancient. Indifferent. Absolute. Bart Schleyer understood this better than almost any person alive. He had spent his entire life preparing for exactly that moment, in exactly that place. He carried the right tools. He had the right knowledge. He had survived everything the wilderness had sent at him for almost 30 years. And yet, the bear spray sat on the ground, waiting for a hand that never reached it. The knife stayed in its sheath. The radio was never turned on. Whatever happened in that spruce clearing happened before any of those things became relevant. Before a man with 20 years of survival experience, a man who had faced tigers in their dens, who had treated danger as a form of recreation, even had the chance to react. That is the detail no theory fully accounts for. Not the bear, not the medical event, not the unknown. Whatever eliminated Bart Schleyer, it did so in the space between one breath and the next, without a sound, without a struggle, without giving him, the most prepared man in that wilderness by any measure, a single moment to respond. The Yukon does not explain itself. It has no obligation to. It existed before Bart Schleyer arrived on its shores, and it continues now, unchanged, as though he was never there at all. That is not cruelty. It is not malice. It is simply what the wilderness is. And from somewhere out on that dark taiga, the silence says everything. And nothing at all. The untouched bear spray of Bart Schleyer is the definitive anomaly. An expert erased in a fraction of a second, leaving behind a single, chilling piece of evidence. Still sealed, still waiting. Exactly like that small black plastic cap left sitting on a rock by a 14-year-old girl. If you missed the beginning of this nightmare and want to discover the case of Stacy Aris, click on the video on screen.